There are different styles of prose and poetries in different languages. One such form of poem is ballad in English language. Ballad is a long form which has a narrative story in it with certain rhyme scheme and a message. One such ballad is found in the Class 9 Beehive textbook of CBSE under the title A Legend of the Northland written by Phoebe Carey. So here we are going to read and understand the entire ballad and its message. So hey my dear students and viewers, welcome back to my channel Scorpio Class. In this video, we are going to read and understand a ballad poem, A Legend of the Northland written by Phoebe Carey. So let's get started. But before that, if you are new to my channel and watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get the notifications of all the upcoming videos. So let's get started. Here about the poet. Poet is Phoebe Carey. We have very little information about poet. She's an American poet who died at a very young age of 46 years, and her genre of writing was prose. So here we have introduction to the poem. So let's see the introduction first. A Legend of the Northland is a ballad. A ballad is a poem narrating a story in short stanzas. Ballad is such kind of poem that tells a story in short stanzas, and in the poem all the stanzas comprise 4 lines. In total there are 16 stanzas in this poem, and these stanzas will tell us a story. Okay, so as I said, ballad is a long narrative story in the form of poem. So here we have 4 lines in each stanza, and this poem consists of 16 stanzas in total, and it will tell us a story. So this story is of the Northland area, the area which is near to the North Pole. This exact place is not specified, but Northland means the area which is in the northernmost part of the earth, that is near the North Pole. Legend means a historical story, one which is very old and has been passed on from generation to generation. Okay, so this story takes place in the Northland area, though the specified area is not mentioned. It is in the northernmost part of the earth near the North Pole. And the title says Legend of the Northland. So here legend means a historical story which is very old and has been passed on from one generation to the other generation, eh, orally you could say, just by reciting it. Okay, so this was a small introduction. Now let's move ahead. Let's start with the stanza and its explanation. So here we see the first stanza. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. Okay, so these are 4 lines of first stanza. So let's see the explanation of the poem. In the region around the North Pole, that is Northland, the duration of the day is very less because its position is such that the sun's rays reach for a very less time. When this area is experiencing winter season, the duration of the night is very long and the daytime hours are very less. In line 4, they refers to the people who live in this region. The poet says that the duration of the night time is so long that the people cannot sleep them through. If they go to bed, take few hours of sleep and then they wake up. It is still night time. He wants to emphasize on the fact that the duration of the night is very long. Okay, so the first 4 lines we are getting to know about the Northland, which is a region somewhere around North Pole, where the hours of the day are very few. They are very short days, and the nights are so long in the winter season. Okay, the people living there, they cannot sleep the entire night. They sleep and they wake up, and still it's just night time. So here, the poet wants to emphasize that the duration of the night is very long. Okay, now let's go to next stanza. Where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bear cubs in the funny furry clothes. So we have word meanings here. Let's see. Sledges means it's a vehicle on runners for conveying loads or passengers over snow or ice. often pulled by draught animals. Draught means domesticated animals who are just used for carrying the loads and luggages. To harness means to tie the reindeer with a rope to the sledge so that it can be used for transportation. Okay, so a harness is something, a rope used to tie with the animal to the sledge to a vehicle so that it is attached, and when it is pulled, it goes on along with it. Now, the next is swift. Swift means something which runs very fast. So, this sledges, it moves very fast on the snowy mountain. Okay, so these are the word meaning. Now let's see the explanation. The Northland region experiences severe cold condition and its snowy area. So the reindeer is an animal which is found in the polar region, right? So people tie the reindeers to sledges and then the reindeers pull the sledges. Here you find the children that they look like young bear cubs because they are wearing funny clothes which are made of fur to make them warm. Actually, it is made out of furry skins of bear. So if and when the children wear these clothes, furry clothes over there to make themselves warm, they look very funny like bear cubs. So this is what mentioned in the second stanza. Let's move to the next. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe it's true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Now, here word meaning is curious. Curious means strange, or it could also be an interesting story. Okay, so let's see the explanation here. They refers to parents or the elder people of this country, of this area, you could say. So here they tell them a curious story. They tell the children the curious or the interesting stories, and these stories, the poet says, it he she did not believe that it's true. These stories which are said in an interesting manner to the kids, to the children over there, may not be true. And yet, the poet says, you will learn a lesson if I tell this tale to you. Okay, so the poet wants to share this story with the reader because maybe it may not be true, but it definitely has a lesson to learn from it, which gives an important message. Okay, so this is a brief background of Northland. Okay, and about the people over there. Now let's see what tale or story do the poet has to tell us. So let's start. Next stanza, which is a continuation of the part of the poem, but the story basically starts from here. Let's start now. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching, just as he did, you know. Okay, so word meaning here is Saint Peter. Saint Peter is an apostle of Christ or a disciple or a follower of Jesus Christ, you could say. Preaching means to give a religious talk. So the explanation of the stanza is the story is about a Saint Peter, where Saint Peter used to live in the world and went around giving religious lectures to the people, just like all other saints do. Then an incident happened. Okay, so first four lines of this story, when it starts, it says that there was a good Saint Peter who lived in the world back behind over those era, and he walked here and there everywhere, preaching the religious talk as any saint could do for the religious, as for passing the religious knowledge. Now let's see what happened. What incident occurred here? He came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. Okay, the hearth is a fireplace where you do cooking. Okay, because it's a cold area region, or when you are making a fireplace outside in an open area, it is known as hearth. Now, when Saint Peter was moving around in the world, giving the religious lectures, he happened to reach to a door of a cottage where he found a small woman who was making cakes. And it was just being baked on a fireplace, which is known as hearth. So let's see what happens next. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. Okay, here word meaning faint. Faint means to be weak or famished. When you don't have any food for the entire day, you start fainting. You become weak. You become very like as if you have lost all your energy and strength. Okay, so the explanation of the stanza would be as Saint Peter, he had been walking all the day and not eaten anything. He was very hungry and he was feeling very weak or he was feeling very faint. So he went to this woman who was baking these cakes and asked her to give one of the cakes out of the many which she had kept in her stores, which she had already baked. So let's see what happens next. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Okay, so here explanation is she started making a little cake because she did not want it to give a bigger or a larger cake which was there in her shelf, as she was a shellfish woman, you could say. So she started making a little one, a smaller one, and she did not want to share her things. But when she put this cake, a little piece of cake to be baked, and when she looked at it as it was being prepared, she thought that this cake was also too big to be given to someone without any cost. So she was not ready to or willing to give even this smaller cake. Then let's see what happens. Therefore, she needed another, and still a smaller one, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. So here word meaning of needed is to make dough from flour. Okay. And explanation is this little selfish or a miser woman, you could say, she thought that the cake was too big to be given away. So she started making another much smaller cake to give him away. But when she looked at that cake as it was being baked, she found it as big as the previous one. Again, she was not ready to give the smaller piece of cake to Saint Peter. Okay, so what happened next? Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. Okay, so here word meaning is scrap. The meaning of the word scrap is small amount. She took even more smaller amount, a scrap of from a dough, and then she started rolling it as thin as a wafer. Wafer is a very thin layer of biscuits which are being just kept along with the cream, and you get so many wafers, so you may just compare it how thin a wafer is. It's very easily broken, or even it gets flew away with the pressure of the air. Okay, so it's as thin as that. But the poet says that she was not even ready to give that thin piece of cake. So she was so greedy that she couldn't give that thin piece of bread to the saint. So let's see what happens next. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away, so she put them on the shelf. Now, this woman, she reasoned, she thought that when she ate these cakes for herself, she found it very small and not enough for herself. But when it was to be given to someone else, she found it that it is too big to be given away. So she put all the cakes on the shelf of her kitchen and did not give any of it to Saint Peter. So after this, what happened? Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint. And surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Okay, so word meaning of provoke is to make him get angry. An explanation of the stanza is Saint Peter, he got very angry when he saw this behavior of this woman, little woman, who was very selfish. As he was feeling very weak and he was very hungry, he just wanted to have a piece of cake, but which was not, he did not get it from that woman, even though he waited for it, even for a smaller one. But this behavior of the greedy woman was enough to anger the saint. Let's see next. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Okay, so your word meaning of dwell is to live. So Saint Peter, he got angry and he cursed the woman that she was very selfish and she did not deserve to live like a human, and God had given her food, shelter, and fire to keep her warm, but she did not deserve all these things because she was too selfish to have all these resources. He cursed her, and let's see what happened after that. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard, dry wood. Okay, so the word meaning of scanty is very little. Boring means to make a hole in something with a tool or by digging it. So Saint Peter, he cursed the woman that because you're selfish, and hence you should become a bird, and you do not deserve a human form nor all the resource which you have got. Now he curses that she shall be a bird and build her houses just by boring into the wood, and also collect very little food by working hard the entire day. And similarly, she would also work very hard in the dry wood all day and get very little or scanty food and very small place for herself to live in. So this was the curse given by Saint Peter, who was angry because she did not give him any piece of cake from her store. Now let's see what happens. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. Okay, so what happened as soon as Saint Peter cursed the woman, she did not get even a chance to speak for herself or apologize or say something, but she just flew up to the rooftop through the chimney, and she was in the form of a bird now. Because Saint Peter's had cursed it, the curse had converted the woman to be in a form of bird, that is woodpecker. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burned black as a coal in the flame. Okay, so word meaning here of scarlet is brilliant red color cap. Okay, it is referred to cap. And when the woman turned into a bird, what happened was the entire body and the clothes were burned and she turned into black, but just the scarlet cap which she had on her head retained the same, which you could see in on woodpecker's head even today, which is a bit red in color. So the entire body being burned just as black as coal and leaving the colored cap on her head as it is. Now, next is every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. The word meaning of the country here is belonging to the countryside, or that is rural areas. Now, people who live in these rural areas, even the small children who go to school, whenever they see this kind of bird in the woods, they see that they say that she stays there all day and keeps on digging the wood with her beak to collect her food. And whenever any child sees this kind of bird, they remember the stories which were told to them by the elders. They said that the bird used to be a woman earlier, and she was very greedy, and so she was cursed by a Saint Peter and then turned into a bird. They get a teaching that they should not be greedy. So whenever this bird woodpecker is found on the trees on the countryside, the school going boys, they just remember and recall this story of a greedy old woman who has turned into a form of bird, and thus they learn a moral, a lesson from the story, that they shouldn't be greedy, they shouldn't be selfish, and they should always offer to help the ones who is in need. Okay, so this is all about the story and the moral, the ballad actually, and the moral which you have behind it. Okay, and let's now come up to the literary devices in the poem. As it is a poem, a long poem, a ballad, we definitely will have a rhyme scheme. Rhyme scheme in this poem is A, B, C, B form. You can just go through the lines of the poem and find it out. And the second literary device here is alliteration. It is the repetition of the consonant sound into a more close words. That means the same sound the word is starting with the same sound. So you have an ample number of examples here. Stanza 1, you have that, they, them, through, where th sound is being repeated. Similarly, second stanza, th sound is repeating. In stanza 5, w sound is repeating. And in stanza 6, you have f sound, faint, fasting, this kind of sound like of F is being repeated. So these all come under the example of alliteration. The next literary device is repetition. Any word or sentence is repeated to lay emphasis on it, then it is a repetition. So in stanza 1, the word away is repeated. Stanza 9, rolled, it's repeated. Stanza 13 and 16, you see boring word which is repeated. So it makes repetition. Next, you have enjambment, running lines of the poetry from one to the next without using any kind of punctuation to indicate a stop. Means the line is continued to the next line without having any full stop or comma. Okay, so in stanza 1, you could see line 3 and 4. Stanza 2, you have line 1 and 2, and line 3 and 4, which are an enjambment. And the next literary device you find is simile. Simile is a comparison, direct comparison using as or like. So here you see an example in stanza 2. The children looked like bear's cub. Children are compared to bear cubs, right? Stanza 9, baked it thin as a wafer. Cake is compared to a wafer. And in stanza 15, clothes were burned black as a coal. The color of the burnt clothes is compared to that of a coal. So these are the literary devices that you find in this poem, and the entire poem was explained and with the word meaning. I hope you have understood the meaning, and this video was informative for you all. If you found it informative and if you liked it, do hit the like button and share it with your friends, and stay tuned for more such videos. We'll be back soon with question and answer sessions. Thank you.